doesn't work.
Well, hello, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Skeptics and Seekers. I'm your host, David the Skeptic, and I'm joined by a motley crew. They just got out of prison last night. You all owe me bail money. Starting from the bottom left, I mean, it may not look like that to you guys, but it looks like that to me, and so that's the only perspective I care about. Starting from the bottom left is Matthew. How you doing?
Hello, I'm Groovy Dudes. Are you right?
Okay, I didn't catch a word of that. And moving right along, we have Teddy. Teddy the Bear. How you doing?
Hello, doing well. How about you?
Doing fabulous. I really can't tell who this person is because they're not in a video thing. Their name is too small for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and say we have Darren. How you doing, Darren?
I'm vertical and mostly awake.
Okay, fantastic. And finally, and definitely least, we have Andrew the Dark Knight. How you doing, Andrew?
I would be doing a lot better if I quit joining Skeptics and Seekers podcast, but I'm here.
So would I.
Well, hey, there's this big red button over here. Should I use that? I think
I just want to know who's responsible for continuing to invite me to these things.
Me too.
This is one of those shows that really would be better off without me, but you're stuck with me anyway. And so today we are having a palate cleanser, because we have spent the last, roughly 5 weeks talking about epistemology. I don't want to talk about epistemology today. Epistemology is over. My head hurts. Next week, we might talk about something meaningful. But this week, this is one of our famous non sequitur shows. And today, we will be teching the tech. Ready?
Ready.
But
Yeah.
does everyone have their propeller hats on?
No.
I know at least one person brought a tinfoil hat. It's a tinfoil hat.
In honor of
we go.
Andrew with the horns.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. So without any further ado, we're going to jump right in, and we're just going to do some how do I change the, anyway, never mind. I see Zoom, it's kind of new to me, and now I've done something to screw things up and I have no idea how to get back to it. As long as you can still hear me, that's fine.
I'm alive, not a cat.
You're not a cat. I've been trying to put a cat filter on you this whole time, and I just can't figure out for the life of me how to do it. So we are going to start in with our list of questions. I am going to ask Andrew and Matthew. I know that Andrew does not have his list on him, so mostly Matthew, to help keep an eye on the list and to moderate this thing so that we don't get bogged down. So I am giving you co-host moderation powers.
Okay. You might regret it, but we'll see how that goes.
I will not regret it. I seriously, there might be a moment here where my audio cuts out and you're thinking, hey, is he still there? No, my audio's fine. I just left. That is among all things possible. I suspect that half of my guests do this on a regular basis anyway. So that said, going right in, I just want to set the level so the audience can figure out exactly what kind of geek we are, because I say this often on the board, we are all the same kind of geek at the core. And the reason I know that is because we all have met up on discussion boards to argue vehemently about things, much of which doesn't matter. We are nerds. And so how deep does that nerddom run? So I'm just going to start with the first most obvious question. I think, and I want everyone to just go around and give a one-word answer. Windows or Mac?
Windows, really?
Andrew.
Linux.
Okay. Muting Andrew. Darren.
I'm a Windows guy. It has all the games on it.
Okay, that's fair. Matthew.
It has to be Windows. My entire career has been Windows based, so there is no other
basically
option.
you're held hostage by
Is
Windows.
That
Yeah.
what you call what you? Okay.
Teddy.
Mac.
Woo! Mac. So Teddy and I have something in common. I didn't think that was possible. There you go.
Oh, you know.
Yeah.
We like to be
Stuff with-
incendiary. So that's something else.
So what is, since you have the mic, Teddy, your favorite technology from the past? And by past, I mean anything before today.
Okay.
So
Well, I'm going way back. I am going to go way, way back because you said technology.
I did.
So my favorite technology, which is pretty old, but when I was a kid, my Uncle Ted got me one of those little record players for kids, and he bought me 12 long playing Disney records that when my neighborhood friends were not around, because I'm an only child, I would sit at my desk and I would draw and I would listen to my Disney records with the music in the background as somebody would narrate the story. And especially if it was raining outside. I mean, that was just this wonderful little joyful place for me. And I just have such fond memories when I think about that, but just kind of that little bit of scratchiness to a vinyl record, especially back then. It just, I don't know, and then you had, I think it was the Anderson sisters that would do their thing with those Disney, with some of the songs like in Alice in Wonderland and stuff like that. And it was just that old timey sound. And I just, that's got to be what is probably the most heartwarming aspect of technology. And that is very old.
So
But
basically a Victrola. Okay.
Oh,
I-
wasn't a fancy Victrola.
So
I got it old.
my answer is actually very similar to yours. So surprisingly, it would be the cassette. And I will tell you why. In fact, it will be a combination of a cassette and a large, bulky yellow tape player. 4-track cassettes and a 4-track tape player. So why? Well, Andrew knows why. But when I was a kid, I got interested in books reading very early. But it didn't take long to realize that I can't see well. The world of reading is going to be a bit of a challenge. But there's this thing called the Library for the Blind. Back then, there were no websites, no internet that we would think of as an internet today. And so the federal government has a division,
National Library Service for the blind and
National
physically
Library
handicapped.
Services, and they recorded the books on tape. This is long before Audible or anything like that. They recorded them on tape, and you could get anything you wanted. And so from the age of about 6, I carried around a tape player, probably the size of a small briefcase today, and a bunch of cassettes, and they represented books, and I always had them, and I used that technology to my benefit, probably more than any other technology that has ever existed. That technology made me who I am. And so I honor it today. Darren.
Mine's a lot less sentimental, just kind of cool. Um, Roman mills. They used to make these huge mills along rivers that had like 5 or 6 water wheels, sometimes as many as 10 or 15. And they were just on the brink of having an industrial revolution when they started declining. And it was all based around this water technology for mass production.
That's cool.
Mm.
All right. Andrew, we'll save the Brit for last.
Okay. So, I think my favorite technology comes out of the 70s. It was those giant yard darts that parents would play with, and, they'd sometimes hit children with them and send them. Okay. But since that's probably out of bounds.
Darts. I had a set. Loved them.
That is
Don't
so
give
scary
blind
to me.
kids jarts.
But since jarts are probably out of bounds for this conversation,
Which is where most of mine ended.
Yes, me too.
And you mentioned vision problems, right?
Yeah, both of us. So by far my favorite technology and another deeply sort of personal technology, something that made me who I am, was the Commodore VIC-20 and its predecessors, the Commodore 64 and the Commodore 128. I fell in love with computers and technology all the way back in the days of Pong. So some of you will remember Pong. It was the little thing you could plug up your TV, and it had 2 knobs, one on the left and one on the right, and you could bat a little electronic ball back and forth across the screen. And we had one of those when I was very young, sort of 4, 5, 6 years old. And it was Pong. It was playing that game when I knew that I loved technology. But it was writing my first computer program on the Commodore VIC-20 that guaranteed that I would not go a day in my life without a keyboard under my hands. And that is the technology that when I think about the thing I love about technology, it is, in fact, I still have a Commodore 64 emulator on my Mac. And so that's it. That was the thing that changed the world for me. And a close second is actually those big yellow tape players, David. We have the same story there. And that opened the eyes of the blind, the library for the blind and physically handicapped. So kudos for that call to the past.
All right, Matthew.
Mine is sadly very similar. I remember the VIC-20, I remember cutting my teeth on that, but for me it was the Oric 1, which is from the same era, same little home computer that you plug into your TV. And that made me realize that I could do something that would impress people. I went from being the quiet boy at school who had very few friends. And then when these computers came out and people would have them on display in shops, and I'd go to the shopkeeper and I said, could I spend half an hour just doing some programming on this Oric 1 you've got on display that's turned on? And he would say, yes, go and do it. And I'll do it. And I'd write a program to do some fancy graphic designs or draw some pretty pictures on the screen. And it wouldn't be long before there'd be a crowd of other kids around behind me, and then one would whisper to the other, God, he's quite good, isn't he? And suddenly I realized that actually this timid little person who didn't impress anybody at school was actually impressing random people on the street who would come into these computer shops and just stand behind me watching me coding. And yeah, I realized that there was something I could be good at and something that I loved.
All right, a surprisingly good set of answers. Shocking.
I'm just curious. Are we all like really shy back in the day? It seems like
we are the same kind of geek.
And now look at us. We're on podcasts like debating religion and politics and tech.
Late bloomers.
Apparently so.
So we will have to move more quickly. because we have a list of 15 questions, and I'm going to plow through as many of them as I can, knowing that I'm going to fail. Now, these do have a little bit of some order to them. The first 5 are generic, the second 5 are industry-based, and the third 5 are ethics-based. And so we might only do 3 of the first 2 so that we can get to the ethics stuff. Because I don't want to leave any of that out. So, what is your favorite piece of tech currently? And it has to be something that you own, not something that's on the market. Andrew.
By far, it's either my Mac or my Linux servers.
Darren.
It's definitely my phone. We had a power outage here in Portland for a few days, and I can do without heat and a lot of other things, but apparently I cannot do without my phone.
Matthew.
That is an obvious answer, but I'm not going to give that one. I'm going to say my Xbox One. I have got to have my weekly dose of a bit of gaming. And when I compare what gaming is like now to what it was when I was a teenager just a couple of years ago, it's stepped up huge. We've gone from 8-bit graphics and 8-bit sound beeps to full-on orchestras and HD video. It's quite impressive.
Teddy.
My iPhone.
Okay. Honestly, I'm gonna have to again.
Agree with me again.
Yeah,
you and Andrew last time. I'm just like, this is mind blowing.
I've owned every iPhone, almost every iPhone. That is to say, when they've launched 2 or more at the same time, I've only owned one of them, but I've owned every new generation iPhone since the beginning of the iPhone. So I upgrade every year, have been doing so. And it's not simply a matter of what the iPhone is, because most smartphones can do most of the things that the high-end phones can do. But Apple was the first company to make true accessibility for people with visual problems available in a touchscreen device. They simply invented that world where it could happen. And I recall, I don't know who I was talking to at the time, but I was saying, look, there are reasons why, there are no accessible touchscreen phones. It's just not something that you would be able to do. And as it happens, it was that year, in fact, that month, it was WWDC, and Apple introduced VoiceOver, and my jaw dropped. And they have simply led the industry, every industry, in making all of their stuff accessible. So it doesn't matter what the product is. You don't have to buy a special product. You don't have to add any software. If you have an Apple product, it has full accessibility baked in. And so I find that extremely compelling for me. It has made modern life livable for me. So someone has their microphone on and is having a quiet conversation with someone. You might want to mute that, because your conversation may come through above whispers. I could hear something anyway. So what is the piece of tech? You know what? I'm gonna skip that one. We might come back. I want to ask number 5. What technology do you most fear? we've got to talk about this a little bit. Does anyone have an answer prepared for this besides me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Matthew, uncharacteristically spoke up first.
Yeah, not so shy. I fear technology that predicts my behavior.
That's a good one.
So do I. So excellent answer. Teddy, what technology do you most fear?
Well, I was going to say where it gets out of control, where you're creating like a Terminator type thing that can destroy you until the battery or the energy runs out. But who knows, it might be smart enough to have the ability to find out where and more batteries or energy sources exist so that it can refuel before it runs out. So, you know, I don't want the
So are you
Terminator.
saying AI as a general category, artificial intelligence?
Yeah, but where it becomes kind of Terminator-like and it just gets out of control. But also a tie with that, well, maybe not a tie, but coming in second would be deep fakes, because you don't know what's true. And so that's pretty concerning.
Okay, Teddy, stop taking my answers. Let me just say about your first answer, I think that's a bunch of Hollywood hokum. I don't think that will ever happen. I don't think it can ever happen. So,
But I think there is something that's close to that could cause us concern in terms of self-drive technology in cars. You know, would you get in a self-driving car if you knew that it would sacrifice you over a pedestrian in an accident situation, for example? So we might not have the scenario that Teddy brought up, but there are similar-ish scenarios that we do have to consider.
So I actually don't think that that's a real concern either. Although I've heard that a lot, and I know that a lot of people do subscribe to that. They are not programming self-driving cars to make those kinds of decisions. They're programming self-driving cars to not get in accidents. And so it's not like they have
something will happen.
Right. Well, something could happen and everybody could die, or one person could die, or nobody could die. But it's not like they've got a pre-programmed thing that says, okay, little kids are more important than adults, and women are more important than men, and someone outside the car is more important than the people inside the car. That's simply not how they program it.
I agree. I agree. That won't be how they won't program it like that, but the effect of how they program it will be that.
That is absolutely correct. So a self-driving car does absolutely have to be capable of some level of object recognition. And the result of any kind of awareness like that is to have to make decisions against that input. How close is the thing? How far away is it? How big is it? Meaning, in essence, how survivable is it if the car comes in conflict with the object? So whether you want to think that we are coding to make a choice about internal occupants versus external occupants, that choice will be made, and there is no way to not have to make it, because it's in the nature of driving cars.
But I think that it's the same way that we make those decisions when we drive cars and screw up. I mean, people have accidents all the time, every day, and they're not making that calculation. They're just trying to live when all hell breaks through, and often they don't. Often the person in the other car doesn't. Often the pedestrian doesn't. But it's not a matter of conscious awareness of choosing that fate over that fate. We often don't have time to make that choice.
What happens?
But the computer,
too.
Sorry, Teddy, the computer is not conscious. And so you're right to say that the computer is not making conscious decisions, but that's just tautology. So the question then is, what kind of decisions does the computer make? And it's not really sort of comparable to say we don't have time to make conscious decisions versus the amount of time that a computer has to make programmatic decisions. Computer's got all the time in the world compared to the way that we do our mental processing in regard to potentially catastrophic events. And so the computer will make a decision.
I think the only decision it's making is do everything possible to avoid the accident.
Yeah, there's a lot of decisions that go into that, though.
A lot.
Yeah. Okay. So we have our first conflict, and I will throw this to the discussion board. You nerds out there who have your links proving me right, you can put them on the discussion board.
You can find them on Parler. If you're looking for the links to prove David right, you can find them on Parler and Gab.
Seekers.
Now that it's back up.
skepticsandseekers.squarespace.com. Click on the show and discuss away. Andrew, what scares you?
So Matthew took my first answer, which was hidden algorithms. I agree that the things that are controlling our lives to some extent are those hidden algorithms. Teddy took my second example, my second concern. I'm not really afraid of any of these, but I'll give you my third, which is one that I probably am concerned about even more deeply than the first two, like bulk data collection and algorithms and that sort of thing. The third is the CRISPR-Cas9 toolkit. Our ability to modify the human genome and essentially create designer humans is one that I do have some ethical concerns about. I don't want to see the tools eliminated. I'm not scared of them in the boogeyman sense, but I do think that we've got a set of tools that have maybe outrun our ability to think carefully about how to use them. The best example of this was the Chinese scientist that modified the genome of the two twin girls in order to prevent them from contracting AIDS, or at least to have them be less susceptible. That did in fact work, but apparently it's had some follow-on effects for those two little girls. And the long-term effects probably are not completely well known yet. Now, the scientific community objected to it. They objected to it strongly. And in fact, I think they eventually found him, and he's in quite a bit of trouble with the Chinese government if the reports that came out are correct. But I do think that the CRISPR-Cas9 technology leads us to a place where we potentially create better soldiers and that kind of thing. And so I think we've got some deep ethical issues to take a close look at. And that toolbox is a concern to me.
Okay, I will go and then I'll let Darren close out this round. So, what technology scares me that you guys haven't said, because you've stolen my top 2 or 3 answers already? I think I'll go with a one that's kind of obvious, I guess. Facial recognition and all other types of technologies where it's not just where computers are making decisions for you, but where they are making decisions about you. And the reason I worry about that is that technology is going to, and I hate to drag it down to this level, but I just have to say what's on my mind here. That technology is going to work really great for white males, because they are far and away the predominant people that are programming the technology. So they get to be the ones to test the technology, and the technology will work beautifully on them as it does. This is not a what if concern. This is a current modern concern. Women are not recognized well at all, even white women. However, Black women almost terribly, just terribly, Black men terribly. And so the people who suffer from these types of technologies are the people who are not in the inner circle, the club of people who make the technology. And so I think in far too many cases, a lot of places are going to think that the technology is just fine because look, it works well on 96% of the population, as long as they're talking about 96% of the white male population. And it's not going to work so well for the other percentage of the population, but we're going to make decisions based on it that end up being unfair and ultimately disenfranchise a large group of people. And I think that I think that's a part of what has happened so far. And I think there's good reason why, for instance, a lot of law enforcement agencies and so forth have abandoned that technology or made it illegal. So that's me. Did we just get Russell? We just got someone doing the ding dong.
Yeah, there's a David joined, so I'm assuming it's Mr. Russell, sir.
I was going to ask. Oh, sorry.
Just a second, a little housekeeping. Russell, I cannot see your video.
Yeah, I don't have video right now, but
Okay,
I'm at work.
I also don't see your audio little chat head thing either, but that's okay. You're here, glad to see you. And if you are you still setting up?
I am currently at work, so I'm just kind of listening in.
Oh, okay. So you can't really do the show.
Can't do much with it, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, look, log
Last
out
minute
and
stuff
don't
went
get
down.
fired.
Right, the last minute stuff went down. So
Yeah, no, I forgot you're on call a lot of times. So log out, don't get fired. We'll have you next week.
yep. Take care, guys.
Bye.
All right.
Cheers, dude.
Okay, Teddy, you had something to say about the thing that I had to say?
Yeah. So, are you saying that you can't trust the leftist in Silicon Valley to protect people who are minorities?
Teddy, I don't trust anybody. So you have me. You've got the wrong guy if you think that I've got some kind of allegiance to one side because they've got my back and the other doesn't. I don't feel like that at all.
Yeah, so he can't trust the Republicans in Silicon Valley either, apparently.
I don't know if there are very many of them there. There may be some.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that, look, this is not a political show, but I would say that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook have had a lot more conservative ties than liberal ties. And the fact is, it doesn't matter to me at all whether they're conservative or liberal. Apple CEO Tim Cook has had more meetings that were unofficial with President Trump than any CEO of any company with a president. He was with Trump all the time. We don't know how he votes. I'm sure that Tim Cook is extremely leftist, but he spent an awful lot of time with the Republican president. So once again, I don't care how these people vote. If it comes to trusting the technology in terms of identity and privacy and things that the government can do with information ill-gotten, I don't trust them. I simply don't. And I think that people of color, people who are minorities, have more reason to feel like that. And nothing has happened recently that changes my mind. So I don't actually care about the political party. I don't trust the technology, and I don't trust the people who rely on the technology.
I don't think they care as much about the political party either. When you get into the Facebooks and Twitters and Apples and Microsofts and Googles of the world, I think we are talking not so much about party allegiance as economic allegiance. And while it is probably true that economics share, a Venn diagram with, with party politics. It's not perfect. And CEOs have a responsibility to the bottom line of their companies, just like their CFOs do. There's a certain amount of fiduciary obligation. And so when Tim Cook is with Donald Trump, and by the way, when he's with Joe Biden, and when he's with whoever comes after, the thing that he is going to probably be working more toward is less party politics and more economic advantage for Apple.
Yeah, these companies give money to both sides.
Yep.
This is so it's really not a matter of political leaning as far as it goes. And so that said, Darren, what scares you?
I don't think technology really scares me. I've spent the last few days really thinking about this because it's the one question that I really didn't have a good answer for. And I think I finally figured it out this morning. And it's an answer that a lot of you have been sort of hinting at, but didn't really explicitly say. But I don't fear technology. I fear the people using the technology. Or what the technology allows these people to do. For example, nanotechnology. It's going to be a godsend for medicine and construction, but it also has the possibility of becoming the gray goo scenario, where someone decides that they want to go ahead and just have the nanotechs, the nanites reproduce without any boundaries. And so they basically turn everything in existence into just this gray goo. That's, so for me, it's not the technology that I fear, it's the people using the technology.
Okay, so I'm going to squeeze this question in because I have an answer for it and I just want to give it. So if everyone can consider this a lightning round, technology that doesn't exist that you want to see. So future tech, if you will, for me, a lot of things obviously could fit in this category, but I think based on the last few years and some of the concerns that I have with technology, what I would like to see is a new kind of gun. Yeah, I'm an anti-gun guy, but I want a non-gun gun. I want a phaser, essentially. I want something that is effective but non-lethal, in that that can be used as a distance, so that it would give police officers the leeway to make mistakes without,
you mean like a taser?
Consequences. No, well, the problem with a taser is it's too close up of a thing, and they're not really that great. Then again, phasers aren't really that great either. It depends on what the writer needs them to do. But
Ray gun.
I want some kind of weapon that can act at a distance that is very discriminate, so you don't have to, there are no innocent bystander victims that and that can incapacitate but not otherwise harm. And
I do not want you to have a sniper taser.
right. So this weapon does not exist yet, and I think that that would help with trust issues with, say, law enforcement officers if they had something like that, as opposed to, lethal guns and lethal knees. Anybody got a quick answer for that? That was too long. So your answers are going to have to be shorter than that.
Brain link. Brain
okay.
link. That's my answer.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that. You've got 15 seconds.
I want a computer that we can interface with using nothing but our mind.
I'm sorry, I asked. Matthew.
Teleportation.
No. Do you understand what the transporter does, man?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I still want it.
You would be like Dr. McCoy. You'd never step into that thing.
I want Matthew to have a teleporter.
Just don't let any flies in there with me. That's all I ask.
No, Teddy.
Nice callback.
Mute.
We can't hear you, Teddy.
Best type of Teddy.
Touche. I was thinking in terms of just more immediate needs for this particular technology, especially with the pandemic and virtual schooling going on. I want a cone of silence, like this big, like plexiglass or whatever, so that when I'm doing work, I don't have my son bugging me, talking to me, and then it would be equipped with like this low level electric zap if they try to like do something to mess with it, so it could be like zzz, and so then I could just like have quiet, which would be really amazing. So that's what I want.
You scared me, Teddy. Who has not?
Non-lethal, just like the little dogs have. I mean,
I was trying to pull up a picture of a dog in a cone to give it your cone of
it'd be
silence.
out of the cone, like if they try to disrupt me to where it's,
Yeah, that's a terrible idea. Who hasn't gone yet?
Me.
Okay, Darren.
My technology would be artificial neuron cells. And for David, I recommend he look up the LRAD sound cannon. And for Teddy, I recommend you look up sound curtain. They use them in military, as military security.
Okay, actually, Darren, you scare me more. So
the cone of silence. You remember Get Smart? Like the whole cone of silence.
That was exactly what I was thinking. You put them on, both of them put them on their heads.
Yeah, you don't want any of the gadgets from Get Smart.
Oh, I do. That's why
you want none of those things.
Show.
So,
have like a whole meeting full of people.
Let's talk industry for a moment. So big tech, small tech, a little bit of industry talk. Favorite and least favorite tech companies. I'm an Apple guy, have been since 2002. I used to be a anti-Apple hater, and I ended up needing a notebook. I was going to write a book, and I wanted a notebook for that specific purpose. And I looked at everything. It was my most exhaustive search for everything, and I pretty much decided on a Gateway something at the time. But I thought, well, I'll look at the iBooks, and I did, and I bought one, and I've never looked back. So I've been an Apple guy for a long time. I could say that Apple is the company that has enabled technology to be accessible, all of their technology, and so it became the obvious pick for me. It could simply do things that no other computer could do for people who couldn't see well. I could do a whole show on that, but I will not. My least favorite tech company, the list is long, and the things that I could say about those companies are longer. But I am going to have to narrow it down and say Facebook, which is kind of an obvious answer. I do have a Facebook account, and the reason I have a Facebook account is because I'm addicted to Candy Crush. I've been a crusher for many years, and I've got a lot of data stored there, and so I sign in with my Facebook login, and I got to keep it. So other than that, Facebook does seem like a company that is truly evil. They're intentionally evil. They twirl their evil mustache, and they relish in it. And I think that part of why it's so hateable, it would be one thing if everybody understood that. but I think that they have struck just the right balance so that geeks understand how evil they are and everyday people do not. And so they have a lot of power and a lot of runway to do very bad things. And so I hate them. Matthew.
My least favorite is companies that push out adverts. The adverts that come up on your web browser, which spoil the view of what the news story that you're trying to read because it's popped up in front of it, that slows your scrolling experience down on the browser. The adverts that keep interrupting my mobile experience, whether it's when I'm doom scrolling on Facebook or whether it's when I'm doing a little bit of mobile gaming and an advert pops up yet again. All those kinds of things, they infuriate me intensely. And yet all those adverts, just be gone with a lot of them. Don't want them. But I understand that they're a necessary evil. Still don't like them. My favorite, back to the right at the very beginning, I'm a Microsoft guy. My entire working career has been technology, has been programming, and it's always been Microsoft, from the early BASIC to then Visual Basic to whatever it is I'm doing now. And yet it's just going to be Microsoft. They're indirectly responsible for my life.
Andrew.
I guess I'll have to, I sort of agree with you about Facebook, David, but I think I'm going to have to go to the top of the alphabet for this one and say that I actually hate Amazon more than I hate Facebook. It's a close call, but I think Amazon is doing things not only in the cyberspace but in the real world that is harmful to small business. It's harmful to its large business competitors. It is, in some sense, bad for the workers, and they're predatory in cyberspace. So, and by the way, yes, I'm a Prime member, and even so, I'm aware of the problems that Amazon represents. I know it's sort of an obvious one, right? People like to hate on the big guy, but in this case, I think it's pretty well justified.
Yeah. So we're going to open this up to conversation in a little bit, but I got to tell you, I couldn't pick Amazon because they have positively changed my life in all kinds of ways, and yet I agree with everything you said about them.
No,
so
it's a tough one, isn't it?
Given me something as opposed to the devil that's given me nothing.
Yeah, look, I realize that it's tough, but I wonder, while Amazon has given me probably much of the same things that it has given you, I think the cost is far too damn high. The industry that I like the most at the moment, boy, this switches back and forth day to day because I love what's going on in the quantum space. But right now, there's a lot of stuff going on in the space industry. And I like what's happening there. There are probably companies there that have ethical problems that we could talk about, right? But in general, I like the exploration that we're doing and what we're getting from it. So the space industry in general, without a specific company, if you'll allow that, is the industry that I think I like the most.
Okay. Yeah, I'll allow that. Who hasn't gone yet?
Me.
Teddy.
Me.
And Darren. Okay, so let's save Teddy for last this time. Darren, what's yours?
My least favorite is probably any of the social media companies. They're pretty much their algorithms they use to disseminate information to people is one of the major causes of the political divide and why people are getting so much misinformation directly piped to them. But my most favorite is pretty much anything Elon Musk has done. He is probably the man that has pushed technology and innovation the most in the last, I want to say 30 or 40 years.
Sorry, could you say the name again?
Elon Musk, Tesla,
Elon Musk.
SpaceX, PayPal, all of that.
I hate him almost more than any individual in the tech industry.
Oh, he as a person, he's mediocre at best. But
He's a truly odious individual.
Sometimes. But as far as what he's done in the tech industry, as far as building Tesla, pushing artificial intelligence, he's even creating new CPUs that are specifically designed for AI, which means they can process that kind of information a lot faster. SpaceX, he's actually making it possible for like a real possibility of people going to Mars. He's responsible for all of that. So give him kudos for
Skylink.
that. Skylink, neural nets. He's also doing the neural nets, so he's doing the brain interfaces. Yeah, Skylink will be able to make sure everyone on the planet, no matter where they are, can have internet access. So yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to these batteries that were going to power our houses through solar cells built into roof tiles?
Those are already available.
They sell them.
Okay. So there was a big fanfare a couple of years ago, and now it's gone silent. I don't see any houses with them on. So
yeah,
maybe you guys have them, but I've not seen them in the UK. Oh,
yeah,
them in the UK.
Yeah, do a Google search for Powerwall. You can see them for sale.
Okay, cool. My mistake.
All right, Teddy.
My least favorite and most favorite are both Apple. Most favorite because my favorite device or bit of technology is my iPhone, but least favorite, and I don't know if it was ever resolved in terms of, there was the claim that Apple was with the Uyghurs in China, the Muslim population there in China, and I mean, it's basically a Holocaust going on there. And there's the claim that Apple was lobbying the legislature here in the United States because they were trying to pass legislation so that forced labor couldn't be used, with products and stuff, I guess, sold in the United States. And so, if that's true, I'm not 100% sure if they were using it. I think they've denied using forced labor, the Uyghurs, but it's not like China's got the best track record as far as, even if you're not talking about the Uyghurs, you're, their own, the child labor, and, they're getting just pennies on the dollar, if that, for their work. So, I guess Samsung with their devices in South Korea, but I do prefer the Apple. So
yeah, so I think the whole Uyghur thing is not a problem with Apple as much as it's a problem with China. It's a problem with doing business with China. It's you can have high ideals and goals, but you have to partner with people in the world. And right now, if you're manufacturing large amounts of technology, some of it's going to go through China. And that's just a reality of it. And China is simply a bad actor. So I think that everyone who lies down with China to some degree wakes up with fleas. And Apple is not an exception to that.
No, and actually, as I was formulating as I was thinking about the question, I was thinking, so much of what we have is made in China. But what made Apple sort of stand out, and again, I think we all need to, I don't know what the answer is. I didn't get a chance to do any research on it, but if it's true that they were trying to block legislation that was trying to prevent that in terms of use of forced labor, then that kind of takes it to a whole other level compared to other businesses in the United States. So that might be a little distinguishing factor.
I don't think that that's something that we will know for sure. I don't think that it is the case. But once again, if you're doing business with a place like China, to some degree, you have to follow the local laws to do business there. And the local laws are very bad. And one of the local laws I can imagine is that you cannot give aid to groups that are seen as on the outs in China. So it's a delicate dance, and I'm fairly convinced that whatever Apple has had to do since they've been working with China, every other company in the world that works with China has to do too. Google, to their credit, pulled out of China a long time ago. I really wish that Apple had pulled out of China. I wish that there had been a 2 or 3 year gap where there were no new iPhones, no new Macs, and we figured out new ways to manufacture and we got completely out of China. But Apple CEOs all the way back to Jobs have felt like the best way to deal with a place like China is to engage and stay engaged with the politics. This is a political theory. And I don't know what the right answer is. Sometimes I want to stay engaged with the bad guys because then we can have influence from the inside. Other times I want to have nothing to do with them. And so I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that when you're dealing with places like China, there are no easy answers, and you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of your ethics sometimes.
David, if you'll allow me, I have a problem with China, and I agree with everything you and Teddy have said, but there's another issue with China that I just want to point out if the listeners haven't thought about it. That's China's technology transfer policy. If you're doing business in China and you've got corporate secrets, China wants those secrets. And very often, in order to gain access to the manufacturing power that China has, you are required to transfer those secrets, to give them access. And that's been an incredibly successful gambit for China, right? We've seen them move into some level of technology dominance over the last 2 decades. Surpassed Russia, and our big threat is China because of their predatory practices around technology transfer. And I don't know that there's an answer to the problem, but that's a big issue for me, and it's sort of in keeping with the show here.
So before anyone comes in on that, I want to tell you how the rest of the show is going to wrap up. We're going to spend time talking about the ethics of technology, and this is a part of the show that is really kind of at top of mind when I thought to do the show. So we've got a lot of things that we haven't talked about in the industry section, but what I want you to do, because we've already started this process, is we're going to have some open conversation, and you can take any of the stuff from the industry section and have some general conversation about ethics. We will go into some of the ethics questions before we close out. We might make some of that our closing statement. But right now, I want to have some back and forth, because this is an interesting time. We have Christians on the call, and we have Christian on the call and skeptics on the call, but I'm not entirely sure that technology will break down along religious lines. I really don't. And for anyone listening, there were supposed to be 2 other Christians on the call. Only one of them actually was able to do it this week. So don't think that, skeptics and seekers, they're just loading all of their shows with skeptics. Our skeptics don't have lives, and they say yes to shows, and our Christians do have lives, and they don't. So they don't say yes. So Teddy, on the other hand, being the exception. So that said, I don't think that this is, I don't think that your religious orientation is going to matter in this section. I hope I'm not wrong about that, but I do want to open the floor. And so I'm just going to throw out some incendiary things for people to jump in on. So there's a lot of conversation about whether big tech has too much power. We heard a lot of that in the political season here in America. I'm not sure if that was as much of a cry in other parts of the world. We have one person from other parts of the world who can maybe speak to that. But big tech, too much power, and I think the only reason we're hearing this is because big tech didn't work out well for a particular political party. However, if you go back 4 years ago, big tech worked out extremely well for that party. That's how they won. They were able to leverage social media, for instance, in a way that no other administration had done, no other candidates had done. And as much of an idiot as I think Trump is, either him or his team understood Twitter to the point where they won the election in 2016 on the basis of their ability to manipulate big tech to their advantage. And so I do find it rich when, now that it didn't work out, oh, big tech, it's a problem, we've got to regulate it. But that said, is big tech a problem? Do they have too much power? What is enough power? What would the right amount of power be? If they have too much power, what do you do to pare some of it back? This is, we hear this kind of general angst, and by the way, we hear it from both Republicans and Democrats. This general angst about big tech's power, but I personally don't buy it, and I'm wondering what everybody thinks.
I'm kind of on your side there, David. I don't think big tech has all the power that everybody is saying. They've just got the highway that everybody can drive on. They've provided the ability for me in my little corner of sunny England to be able to make my voice heard all around the world. The power isn't in the big tech giving me that ability. The power is what I say and the people who do things on the basis of what I say. Trump didn't win the election based on his superior left thumb. Trump won the election because of Russian misinformation, making use of that ability of technology. So I don't think the power is being used by big tech. I think the power is being misused by nefarious forces who know how to manipulate big tech.
Did you guys hear the latest news? Nevada is going to pass a law, or proposing to pass a law that will allow big tech to form local governments in the state.
Wow.
That's Nevada.
Right, but
Yeah.
if they set the standard in Nevada, how many other states are going to start
Not every.
adopting that?
How many states have are casino towns? I mean,
Well,
New
at least
Jersey,
they're being open
New Jersey,
about it.
Nevada, where those are the places where anything goes. Other states
Right.
have.
Right, but
little...
the casinos are spreading out from Nevada. Oregon has them, Washington has them, California has them.
Mississippi has them. New Jersey has them.
Right. No, I know, and all of the Native American settlement grounds, they have them. But look, when people want to unroll $1 million and donate it to a local government, they go to Nevada, to Reno, to Vegas, or they go to Atlantic City. That's where they go.
So I wonder, Matthew, I sort of want to probe you about something you said, because I don't know, but we might disagree. I think big tech is a problem. And the listeners that listen to this show and Proscenium and Still Unbelievable will all know that if there's a liberal podcaster out there, I may not be the most liberal, but I'm pretty far down the line. I think big tech is a problem because, yes, they provide the highway. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's exactly right. I don't have a problem with providing a road system. But they also control the toll booth. And what happens in this case is a distinctly biased toll booth. And here's the way that works. If you are a conservative person, what you are going to see in your newsfeed over on Facebook is those things that are distinctly conservative. It may not be all you see, but it is going to be a toll booth that reinforces your opinion. Okay, so the highway thing's getting out of hand. So, but we know that algorithms are a big issue, and likewise, if you are incredibly liberal, you're going to see liberal things in your newsfeed, and I don't have a problem necessarily with that kind of algorithm, but I do have a problem with algorithmic secrecy. I am very in favor of legislation that leave the toll booths in place. That's fine. But I really, really think that, and that makes it stronger, right? Because I really, really think it. Okay. Anyway, I think that we do need some sort of open policy about algorithms so that our data researchers, our computer scientists, and our journalists have the ability to examine these algorithms, to run training data through them, to see what these algorithms are actually doing to shade opinion, so that we can not only report what we see in our news feeds, but how the things that we report get into our news feeds. And right now, that open access doesn't exist. And so I don't have a problem with the infrastructure. But I do have a problem with rather nefarious, sneaky, underhanded, conniving control of how that infrastructure is used. And so I don't know if we disagree or not, but I wanted to bring it up and say,
no, I'm absolutely on board with that. It's one of the comments I made, that this kind of thing, standards and data policy, etc., it should be open, and the government should be able to mandate that, and then everybody has to abide by the same set of rules for how these kinds of things are run.
This is the kind of thing, though, Andrew, that I think playing devil's advocate, because I honestly don't know how I feel about it. So for the moment, I'll play devil's advocate here and say that you don't have to log on to Facebook. You don't have to log on to Twitter. They can be as evil as they want to. Why should the government mandate how they run their algorithms? If you don't,
it doesn't mean that you're not going to be controlled. Sure.
If you don't want to be influenced by social media, stay off of social media.
But that doesn't mean that social media's influence has gone. So I hear you, and sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
it's okay. It's a conversation. I prefer interruption.
Yeah, no, I know. Look, you and I agree on this. So here is my problem. Look, I agree that I don't have to log on to Facebook, and in fact, I don't. I do have an account. Log on maybe 3 or 4 times a year, actually. But just because you don't log on to Facebook doesn't mean that your life is not altered by the way Facebook algorithms influence the people around you. And so we see this today. Look, I don't care whether you agree with QAnon or not. You didn't have to log into Facebook one damn time. Not once in the last 4 years did you have to log in. And if you didn't, you were still influenced by the way Facebook's algorithms worked.
Hey, Teddy, explain to Andrew and me why Facebook should be regulated, or Facebook, or it's social media in general. Like when I say Facebook, I actually mean all of them, because it seems to me, one, there's the argument that you don't have to do it, but two, there's also other media, television. All of television is trying to manipulate you in the same way. In their Nielsen ratings and so forth, they are absolutely trying to manipulate you. That's legal. Pornhub or any type of pornography, they're trying to manipulate you. I almost said they're trying to suck you in, but that would
no, they're just trying to get you to manipulate yourself.
So I mean, everybody is trying to manipulate you, why should we be all up in arms about social media?
Well, I would say that the reason why is because so many people are extremely addicted to social media, and it's a place where people get their news from. And that, of course, impacts elections. And so when we see, for example, with Google, 90 to 95% of searches are done on Google. And when Google is manipulating where they are leading you to in terms of the searches, that influences things, and that can be very, very major. There was a, I think it was right after the 2016 election, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Robert Epstein, and he did the only empirical study regarding Google searches, and he found that Google manipulated and did things in terms of misleading searches, and it shifted upwards to 2.6 million votes to Hillary Clinton. And this guy's a liberal Democrat that voted and supported Hillary Clinton. And he was just aghast at what his findings were. And he was testifying to the Judiciary Committee about that. And he was so concerned that if big tech doubled down on what they were doing during the 2016 election for the 2020 election, that it was just going to be, the outcome was going to be a disaster. And we saw
okay,
what
but we understand that there's manipulation. I'm not even questioning that. I think everybody on the panel would say everyone's manipulating everybody. I'm surprised we haven't heard much from Darren on this. But let's get past the question of whether they're manipulating. I still don't understand why that would give the federal government a right to say, well, you can't do that, or you can only do this amount of manipulation, or shouldn't, if the government is concerned about that, shouldn't they launch their own social media network and then say, this is where the real news is, this is the good highway, and we're going to regulate it so that everybody's fair and safe right here.
Would you really trust a Trump led
in the old Soviet Union? I don't think that, Pravda and, I think the government needs to stay the heck out. And
okay, but why? You can't just say, oh, communism, fear of the boogeyman. That's not an answer.
Okay,
why?
I don't want government controlling the media. I mean, that's the reason why we have the First Amendment. Government needs to stay the heck away from it and let people have as much free speech as possible. And the thing about the framework.
Well, manipulation is free speech.
Well, but here's the thing, and let me just back up with one thing. One of the most important aspects of freedom of speech is political speech. That's at the heart of the First Amendment. And that's what the framers of the Constitution most wanted to protect. And that's what also the Supreme Court of the United States, they give the most protection to political speech, no matter which way it goes. But here's the thing. So the federal government, through it's Section 230 of the U.S. Code, it's the the Common Decency Act, I think is what it was called. And this act, this law, gave these social media platforms legal protection in the form of immunity from lawsuits against things like libel and things like that, because when you've got so many people publishing their opinions on social media, well, not everything's going to be true. So in order to protect the platform, what they were telling, the deal was supposed to be that the social media people, they're like Facebook, they're providing Twitter, they're providing a platform for all speech. I mean, they may have some little regulations here and there, but they're not supposed to, for example, if a conservative is saying something, block them and allow the leftists to post their stuff. And so they were given this immunity by the government so that they wouldn't get sued for things like slander that people are publishing on there. But the deal was supposed to be, yes, but you're not regulating the content in terms of, especially political speech and stuff like that. But we see that that is precisely what they're doing. And so they're trying to make some modifications on, well, if you breach what the deal is and you start regulating, political opinions and things like that, and you're not applying the rules fairly across the board, then there should be some repercussions to that. And I think, maybe something like fines or something to, to kick
Sure.
them in the teeth.
I'm just going to cut you off a little bit because I'm rude. There's a lot of meat in that. And I want to hear from Andrew and Darren and Matthew on that some. I'll just say for my part, I think the First Amendment is a bunch of crap. I think it's poorly written. I think it's badly understood, and it's unfairly used because it's so poorly written and barely understood. And so I don't give a damn about the First Amendment most of the time, but I would say that the First Amendment was interested in protecting political speech, not true speech. It is a protection of political speech. And if they had wanted to protect truth, they could have written a law that said that. And so there's no requirement that there be political truth in any of this. And so if a powerful company has a particular slant and they want to manipulate people toward their slant, I don't see anything in the First Amendment that would stop them from doing it. You would just say, well, it's unfair because they're too good at it and the other guys aren't. Well, that's not protected under the First Amendment. Don't give a damn.
Dude, David, did I just hear you basically acknowledge that there's such a thing as objective?
I can barely hear you. Can everyone else hear Teddy?
No,
Okay?
suddenly got very
Barely.
faint. It was lovely.
I was going to say, I hear you basically say that there is such a thing as objective truth, David.
I didn't say anything about objective truth, but I just said the framers didn't care about truth. They cared about freedom, and that's different. And what you seem to be upset about is that we have platforms that can lie and manipulate and move elections because they're big and powerful, but that's protected. That's what the founders protected. And if they had wanted to protect truth, there would be truth in advertising laws, for instance. Politicians would actually have to give an account for lying to people. They do not. And so once again, if they don't have to give an account for that, why should any company have to give an account of that just because they're lying and manipulating people politically?
But who's going to decide what is true, David? It's only through the free exchange of ideas that when people hear the debate, that's where we have our best hope of truth emerging. And so
Did I just hear you acknowledge that there's no such thing as objective truth?
Truth isn't decided in a debate.
I am saying because we are not God, and God is the only person that has that ability to know what.
Let him come speak for himself.
Yeah, but all of the rest of us, mere mortals, our best chance at trying to arrive at truth is through the free exchange of ideas, the public forum. And so our founding fathers were wise enough to realize
social
that
media is not a public forum. It's all private companies, not a public forum. If you want a public forum, the government should put out a public forum.
But no. What the government needs to do is to hold them accountable for when they are not.
No, they're not a public forum.
They pretty much are.
No, they're not pretty much anything. They're not a public forum.
They are. And
No, they're not.
How?
Can we hey, David, Darren's going to have something interesting to say to Teddy here. And Teddy's had something quite interesting to say too. Teddy, I hate to give you that credit. It pains me, but these are interesting points, and I know that this is important to
do my
Darren.
part to raise the temperature in the room.
And it's well done, sir. But I know that Darren has something to say here. I can feel it. You know, it's coming on me like a spirit.
Let him on then.
Well, honestly, I don't really have a lot to add. I think trying to regulate speech is really problematic because then you have to ask who's doing the regulating. I mean, do any of you really want Trump, the person who has demonstrably had 80% of his statements shown to be absolute lies, regulating what can and can't be said?
I think one of us does.
Well, but I think regulating speech and companies, I think that's addressing the symptoms and not really addressing the problem. The problem is that we live in a culture and a society that has no way to distinguish fact from fiction. We're just not taught how to do that in school. And I think if you really want to solve a lot of these problems, you have to get away from regulations and government and technology, and you have to go directly to the people that are consuming that technology, and you have to give them the tools to be able to distinguish fact from fiction. And until you do that, you might be able to put a Band-Aid on some of the worst problems of the issues, but I don't think you'll actually be addressing the issue.
Teddy, I've got a question for you as a lawyer. David, if you don't mind me asking a question.
No, jump in. I did my best to create a melee. And
It's a job well done.
And it did not happen.
I think it's going to. So, Teddy, tell me this. If I were to host regular gatherings in my house that were political gatherings, but somehow the people there did, they incited violence or they did something else and I didn't stop them, I wouldn't necessarily have something like a Section 230 sort of protection, right? I do have some obligation to not aid and abet people who are fomenting violence or maybe talking about killing people or whatever, right? So,
are you talking about just simple association or social media type stuff? It sounds like you're talking about.
Well, no, that's where the line is, I think. See, so that's exactly right. When I'm in my house, even no matter how large the gathering, as long as I can fit in my house, it's not social media. And I don't have a Section 230 kind of protection, right? I mean, I can't aid and abet before the fact.
But you have the First Amendment right of free association.
Right. So to what extent is me hosting a gathering in my home, no matter how large the gathering, as long as the law fits? So, maybe I bought Bill Gates' house so I can have lots and lots of people there. To what extent is the Section 230 protection for social media different, and why is 230 okay for social media, but it doesn't apply if I want to host a gathering, a very large gathering even?
Right. Well, when you host a gathering in your home or just anybody other than social media platforms, when we say things that are not true, we are subject to being sued for libel and slander. And so there is that check on our behavior in order to encourage that what we say is going to be the truth. So we have that check and balance. But with social media, because obviously, is a platform for all of these comments that people are making, there's no way that they can fact check every single thing people are saying. And so because it's on their platform, had there been not the Section 230 of the United States Code, then then Facebook and Twitter would be subject to all of these lawsuits, and they would shut down, and then we wouldn't have them as a platform. And so it is in a way to try to preserve that that public forum, to allow the free exchange of ideas with people all across the world and all across the nation, that to enable that, and so that they're not, it doesn't just all collapse upon itself from lawsuits. They gave them that immunity, but with that immunity, they're not supposed to then be both controlling the access to the forum, and then also manipulating it. They're supposed to stay neutral and not
Right.
put the thumb on the scale with that. But
Okay,
So I
just
have to
ask real
care
quick,
about
why do you-
truth. I have to care about truth in my house, but I don't have to care about truth on social media.
well, on social media, it's just it's the whole thing. I think John Stuart Mill had said that the best way to handle bad speech is just more speech, and you just duke it out with the free exchange of ideas, and hope that people start to glean what the truth is.
Hey,
But I
Teddy, why do you keep calling social media, let's just say Facebook for short, why do you keep calling them the public forum? See, I'm still stuck on that because there's a public forum, and when you're talking about public from political perspective, you are talking about governmental, you were talking about the public sector as opposed to the private sector. And so Facebook is no more a public sector company than Apple. They're private companies.
And they own their own servers. Government doesn't own the servers.
The company, I'm talking about the public as in the people. So when I say
Right, but the people sign up for a service. That everyone who is, I've got a Twitter account. I don't use it. I've got a Twitter account. I didn't sign up with twitter.gov. I signed up with Twitter, and I had to follow their rules, create an account, and do all of the things that I do with a private company. There's nothing public, at least that I can tell, about Twitter.
But there is, in terms of the immunity that that the government has given them, that special immunity. So in some ways, and I don't know that I've heard this argument made, but it's something that has occurred to me, through the government giving them that special immunity that nobody else really has, they're kind of like an agent of the government. And then you have this legal principle called respondeat superior, which means that when so like in a corporation, when you've got some lower level employee or lower level boss that does something on behalf of the corporation, but maybe they didn't really have corporate permission to do that, but that can actually bind the corporation to what that lower level employee did. Meaning, when you're at the top, you're responsible for what everybody at the bottom is doing, throughout the corporation. And so when the federal government, when they gave social media platforms like Facebook, et cetera, that privileged spot of being immune from, defamation, slander, libel, all these lawsuits that are meant to curtail people spreading misinformation, when they got that immunity from the government, well, then that's throwing some of that governmental public in how you're using it. That throws that into the mix. But
So you're saying it made them public simply because they got a favorable regulation? That doesn't sound right.
Quasi, and it's kind of like, with that privilege, yeah.
But all businesses are regulated. Okay, so all businesses are subject to some regulation or other. You can't say that just because they got some regulation that happens to be favorable to them, that they're now a public company.
But they're subject to lawsuits when they screw up. And the problem
Yeah,
with
but a lot of companies have that.
not with this type of stuff. And then you've got the issue that they're a monopoly, and so you've got antitrust issues in terms of them violating the law, because you got to remember too, it's not like you've got tons of different social media platforms. I mean, the ones that dominate are, you know, Facebook and Twitter, and then you've got Google, where they own what is it? No, is it Instagram that Google owns? No, YouTube.
Facebook owns Instagram.
Right.
Yeah.
Google owns YouTube.
Instagram,
That's correct.
WhatsApp.
And so they are manipulating so much information that people see, and then that can influence politics. And so that's an incredible power that they have, and especially when they are both, it's like they're double dipping. They are controlling the platform, but then they're also playing in the platform.
Okay, but
Well, churches do the same thing, though.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
Good point.
the shareholders, when were they told, oh, by the way, this is no longer a private company? Because Facebook, there was a time when it wasn't a company. We had MySpace, and MySpace, everyone thought was so big and invincible, but it turns out not to be the case. Facebook came on, they were even a bigger behemoth, but they didn't start out that way. They did the things that made them bigger and more successful, and it was a private company. And I don't remember anything that happened in history where you could throw the switch and say, okay, they're now a public company and you can't treat them like a private company anymore. This is, the town square is not Facebook.
I don't know. I think the closest example here might be AT&T. Not a public company. It's now a public utility. I'm not sure that actually works perfectly.
I think there are differences because AT&T had to use public stuff to do what they did. Facebook didn't.
Well, no, those lines that we use today were largely run privately. For instance, U.S. Sprint, the SPR in Sprint is Southern Pacific Railroad. U.S. Sprint's fiber optic infrastructure was laid by using a fiber optic rail car and planting those cables in the ground using a complete private infrastructure, and lots of our public service telephone network is sort of that switch flipping that you're talking about. I'm not saying that you're wrong in the argument you're making. What I am saying is that there are examples of large businesses finding themselves increasingly publicly regulated and increasingly beholden to things like the Public Service Commission.
Well, and
right,
I wouldn't necessarily argue against that because I don't have enough facts at my disposal. But I would just say that at some point, if you're going to say this company has gotten so big and so vital that we're going to take it away essentially and take it over, then there ought to be an announcement for that. You can't just say that this site, Skeptics and Seekers, that I have, is certainly a public utility because it's such a great place to have conversations between Christians and atheists. There's nothing like it on the internet. It's clearly the most successful, and it can't be run by that jackass dictator, David Johnson. We have to have some rules and regulations beyond what he says. At some point, someone's going to have to send me a memo and give me some money for that to happen. And I don't see that transition. But I just wanted to say one thing that I agreed with Andrew about earlier. Matthew, I know you're still there. You're not rude.
I've got a hard stop in a couple of minutes, so you're going to have to make the most of me.
Okay. So the thing that I wanted to agree with was, it wasn't actually Andrew, it was Darren. The real problem here is people are using Facebook and social media for important information and news. The solution, if you see that people are drinking from the sewer, is not to clean up the sewers, the solution is to point them to clean sources of water. And we are using social media in a way, we have raised a generation of people that think that Facebook, what's in their Facebook feed is good, true, accurate information. And this is just a wrong-headed approach. I don't care if Facebook's sewer and Twitter's sewer get cleaned up. What people need to understand is these are sewers. This is not what you should be drinking from. Matthew, make the most of your time. You've heard all of the arguments. Set us all straight. And I know that you've got from someplace else, the elsewhere land. So how do you?
Elsewhere land. Yeah, I've literally only got a couple of minutes. Fascinating, interesting. I'd love to delve into it a bit more. Very, very briefly. I don't buy this this public platform thing. Yes, people are free to come onto Facebook and do what they want, but Facebook isn't, and all the other multimedia, they haven't got the same standards. Here in the UK, we have the Advertising Standards Authority. If you make an advert, if you pay somebody to carry an advert for you, and you have misinformation in that advert, you can be prosecuted for that, because but you as the company, you've got control over that advert. Facebook don't have any control. Twitter don't have any control over what I put out. They can only reactively do something about it. And it's only in recent years, with the whole public outcry over misinformation, that social media companies are doing something about it. They're not doing something about it because the government has said you need to clean it up. They're doing something about it because there's been an enormous public outcry about it. And people are saying, you guys, you've got to stop. We want to use your service, but you've got to stop. And I think it's the public that have driven this, not government. So very quickly, the point I made earlier about open standards from government, I think governments need to be much more heavy-handed. And I think they need to be heavy-handed in the sense that they need to specify a public policy on the way things are. They need to specify an open public policy about how data is collected and used. And I think they need to specify an open public policy in algorithms. Now, if I make a comment, there needs to be an open public policy in terms of how that comment then drives the adverts that I see. And I think the government needs to say, put that kind of thing open, and they need to make it public. And yes, people can vote on those things, and yes, they can have people can influence what those policies say, but then the technology companies must follow those guidelines that the government has said. Then everybody knows. And the reason why I say that is so that then everybody knows, everybody's informed. I'm not saying it so that government must control them. I'm saying that the government agrees a policy that everybody knows this is the policy. And then because we're there and informed, we can then make decisions on the social media we interact with because we're informed. Currently, we're not informed. Each company makes their own decisions and they use their own algorithms. We have no idea what those algorithms are. We have no idea what they do with our data. And I think it's that hiddenness which is part of the problem. And I think if we can have it much more open, and that openness be driven from government, and then the private companies then follow the guidelines from the government. And that's probably me out. Thank you, guys. I know you probably disagree with me. I know I'm probably wrong, but that's how I feel right now. And maybe my opinion will change next week. Lovely chatting with you all. Absolutely. And it's fabulous being on people who've got better lighting than I have here at home. And until next time, guys, cheers.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Matthew. It's a very strong statement. I don't know whether I agree or not, because I don't really know. These are difficult and challenging issues, and so I've got to tell you guys, I kind of want to do a second week of this because I've got so much that's going on the cutting room floor.
And we're not even into artificial intelligence, machine learning, and how that sort of thing is deployed, and how it figures into our ability to speak freely, how it can be manipulated by one side or the other in order to favor their viewpoints. We're not even started. We're not even started.
Yeah, there's so much, but I do want to do one quick round of other purely ethical issues that may or may not have to do with the industry per se. Also, if you guys wouldn't mind, I really do want to do another week of this because there's
game.
there's a lot here. I've got another page of notes that are not published to you guys yet. So so that said, I asked everyone, or said that everyone could bring their own tech ethics question to the table. Who brought one?
Well, we were kind of discussing, mine had to do with the whole freedom of speech issue on these social media platforms. So
right. And that's a conversation I actually want to pick up next week, because what I want to get into is freedom of speech does not mean freedom of audience. So just because you, Teddy, have freedom of speech doesn't mean that I can't ban you from Skeptics and Seekers any day, anytime, for any reason. You don't have a right to the SNS audience. So Tara is correct in saying I am a benevolent dictator. Now, she does not say that I'm benevolent, but everyone who has a platform is a benevolent dictator. Jack Dorsey is a benevolent dictator over Twitter. Mark Zuckerberg is a benevolent dictator over Facebook.
No, he's not.
immunity.
I'm being kind. But so you have the freedom of speech, but you don't have the freedom of audience. I don't want you to reply to that. I want you to save it for next week, because that's part of the discussion we didn't get into. One ethics issue, maybe each, for those who survived this long. Me first. So number 15 on the list: if we could use technology to fix a person's personality instantly, would it be ethical? And I'm just going to give my answer right now. No. Although I wish we had that technology. And I'm not even going to say that I wouldn't use it if I was the hegemon of the world. But I don't think it would be ethical. I think it would be something that science fiction has called the death of personality. And I believe the death of personality is the death of the person. And so I think we can save a lot of money and just kill the person. I don't think that it is any less ethical to kill the person than it is to alter their personality in this way. So,
dude, I can't let you do it. Look, first of all, do you have their consent or not? I think is a big issue. And
no.
And second, well,
so
okay.
In my particular question, it's not a matter of consent. It's a matter of they're a serial killer, and you're gonna fix them.
So in general, I would have said yes, but it required consent. And I'm confused by this bit where you say fix them and then you call it personality death. Those things seem to be so diametrically opposed that I don't know how you leap from we've figured out a way to fix them, like stopping their desire to set houses on fire. I don't care about the house. I'm not talking about killing people. We're just talking about destroying property. I'm not emotionalizing the conversation. So we're going to fix them, stop them from destroying property, and you called that a death of personality, and that seems really strange to me.
Yeah, because you are basically taking them over and implanting another personality on top of theirs that's not theirs.
Yeah, so if that's your definition, I can run with that. I would see the technology differently, because surely, or at least hopefully, it would be more discreet than. I'm not picking on your example. If that's the one you're using, I completely accept it. But a slightly modified version of that technology would be to fix this thing, not to like completely overwrite their personality, but change this negative trait.
Yeah, well,
so,
I understand
sorry,
that, but
I think that's
pyromaniac really likes setting houses on fire.
I really don't
But-
care.
They really, really like it.
I really don't care.
So there you go. That's what I mean. That's where it becomes unethical.
Eddie, no one can hear you.
Be ethical. I mean, everything really is fact dependent. Okay, so we can't just make these across the board rules, but in terms of situations where it can be ethical, as a society, we have laws. So we deem certain types of behavior, especially behavior that impinges on somebody else's rights. And if it starts to suppress or oppress other people, we put people in prison for that. We deprive them of their liberty, and sometimes we even put them to death. And so wouldn't it be much better if you could just, zap somebody? And so you've got some sociopath that is a serial killer or a child molester, and you can fix what is wrong with it. And remember, I have principles that deal with right and wrong, that are, I think, objective truths. And so I can call a child molester, their behavior wrong. I don't,
We all can.
I don't think it requires anything like objective truth. And Dave, I disagree with you because changing this trait ultimately results in a better environment for more people. I don't need objective truth to observe an outcome and say this is a technology that can better an outcome for more people. And so I don't particularly care that this individual likes setting fires when many more people are impacted by the fire setting. And sorry that I took away their matches.
And
plus, we already have the technology and we use it.
And it's win-win, because now that person doesn't have to spend the rest of their life or 10 years or whatever in prison having a loss of liberty. Now they can be a part of society, not damage other people. Now, obviously, there's the potential for great abuse with this, but just about anything can be abused. You can have a pencil and stick somebody in the eye with it, and that pencil's been weaponized. But most of the time, a pencil is a handy thing for people to have. So it's a delicate balance, but I think it's better than people losing their liberty. I mean, because I'm a liberty lover, and I want as many people to have it and enjoy it and just knock themselves out with it.
Okay, so thank you, panel, for acknowledging that you are unethical monsters. Who else has an ethical?
Well, I would just like to add to that before we
Go ahead.
move away. We already actually have the technology to fix people's personalities. They're called antipsychotic drugs. So we do it already, and people seem to think that's a good thing. So antidepressants, antipsychotics, people have no problems using those, and they
Right,
all
but
seem to
people
think it's a
take
good
those
thing.
voluntarily.
Not all the time.
Sometimes, not all the no. Right. Sorry, Darren.
I have nickel for all of the people on probation who have mental health disorders and who are doing fine and then get off their meds. How do you enforce their medication? Are you going to put like one of the little bracelets on their leg and have the probation officer watch them on video taking their medication every day? Or
look, I understand what everyone is saying, but once you decide that you are going to embetter a person that doesn't want that embetterment, because you have the power, you can strap them down, you can pump them full of drugs and change them. Then that person no longer has any autonomy. They have no agency. And when you're done pumping them full of drugs, they have no self. And so
I don't agree with that.
what you've done is simply created a new person, and you've killed the old one that you didn't like.
You've hung personhood on one trait of personality, and I disagree that we are that flat.
We're as flat as the earth, my friend. Did anyone
Flat
else
as
have
the-
any? Did
No,
anyone else have any in that category that you wanted to bring real quick? Yeah, that's fun. You guys are moral monsters. What else? Andrew, did you have one? I know that you actually have a bunch.
Yeah, technology and ethics. I'm not sure which one to pull out of this. I actually liked the personality bit, and I probably would have gone with the CRISPR-Cas9 creating super soldiers that I mentioned earlier. So let someone else go, and I'll take a consideration of the rest of the film. And
Teddy,
see
you've
what's up.
actually been remarkably cogent this time around. Do you have a ethical issue dealing with technology that you want to air very quickly?
Well, it was just what we were talking about with the free speech, where I thought you told me to save it for.
I did. So you didn't have. Okay, that's fine.
I don't have anything else.
Aaron, did you have anything?
Well, most of mine is about the transhumanist stuff, but one that I thought might be
I
interesting
like
for this
transhumanism.
Yeah, but one that I thought might be interesting for this discussion is advertising, forcing people to see advertising, especially when we achieve things like Neuralink. And so people are going to be able to send their advertisements directly into your brain.
I really like that issue too, Darren. So this one, we will bat it about a little bit, but this is probably going to be a holdover to the next show because there's so much there. I will jump in once again just because I can. So I've been kind of in the business of the internet on and off for a while. Like I make my money via the internet. No, I am not a chat room star or anything like that. That was a rather failed business. But almost all of my writing goes to the internet. People pay me to, you could say, influence people, and everything that I write ends up getting laden with advertisements and things like that. So I'm a part of it, and I've been kind of playing in that game in different roles for a number of years. So there's a personal element of it to me. I can tell you, as someone who has run 2 or 3 blogs, that advertising is the best, quickest, easiest way to make money. And if you've got a blog or a website that you like, Verge, Engadget, physics.com, whatever they are, they're making, well, in fact, I'm not sure about physics. I'm not sure how they do it. But most of the people that you see online are making money via advertising. And if it wasn't for the advertising, they wouldn't be doing it. Now, granted, the internet and blogs and things like that, podcasts, they existed before advertising. But that's a bit of a straw man argument. It doesn't matter. The internet that we have today wouldn't exist without it. So there is, on the one side, an argument that advertising is absolutely necessary for the medium. But on the other hand, there's the argument that advertising has gotten out of hand. And I would just say, since I'm sure we're going to talk about this next week, somebody please write this down so that I don't forget. The problem that I think Darren and earlier Matthew are having with advertising is not as much advertising as what passes for advertising. So an example of advertising would be you're driving down the road and there's a billboard and you see it, but then you can look at it or you can not look at it. Or on television, you're watching a show, there's a commercial break, you can sit there and watch them or you can not watch them. But with the internet, because of the technology that's available, what they want to do, what they're trying to do is force you to see the advertisement so that it's not advertisement anymore. It becomes a type of manipulation, mind control. And it these days, content is just a way to deliver advertising. Advertising is no longer a way to deliver content. And so there's a lot to unpack there. Most of what advertisers do is not advertising at all. It's tracking and things like that. We can get into a really highly technical, geeky conversation. I hope we do next week. But I would just say that, yes, this is an excellent topic. Yes, there's a lot of avenues of ethics there, but I think the problem is not proper advertising. I think the problem is what we're calling advertising today that no longer is.
Oh, and I just thought of something. What about the whole thing where they talk about all these people that have what's it called? The machine where it's like Siri, but in your house, where you ask it questions or have it turn on the television, and the whole thing about how they're saying a lot of times.
Smart things, Internet of Things.
Yeah, that's actually Siri. Yeah.
But there's another one that's Alexa.
Alexa.
Is the one. And, hey, Alexa, do this for me. And they're talking about how a lot of times people think that stuff is off, and it's not off. And also the invasion of privacy when you don't realize. I was just listening to something the other day where they were talking about how this woman, she was a yoga instructor, and she goes to the store, and for the first time she purchases some weird coconut something flavored ice cream that she'd never bought before. And then she gets home and then gets on the computer and then sees an ad for that exact same product, and she's never seen it before. And she's like, she asks her friend who's very tech savvy, are they tracking me? I'm at the store. And her friend was like, well, maybe it's through either your store savings card. You can sometimes have those where it's like a permanent coupon or whatever. But people are frequently seeing, they get on the internet, they order something from some website, and then all of a sudden you get all of these ads dealing with those types of products. And so it is sort of that tracking and the targeting, but especially like with the Alexa, people are saying how, or even televisions, they're saying how sometimes they are listening to you when you don't realize they're listening to you. It's being recorded. Now, I don't know if it's on some sort of a loop to where it eventually gets erased, but there's all this talk about every single thing, every single search you make on the internet, how the government and stuff like that's tracking you, and Facebook and all that. And that starts getting a little creepy in terms of how much knowledge they have about people. It's one thing when you are voluntarily kind of ceding over that information, but it's another thing entirely when we don't all have there's not always full disclosure in terms of you have your phone off, but it is something still recording or listening. And that's that's a huge ethics issue and privacy concern.
Yeah, all of that, the Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, all of those always listen because they have to be aware of when you say, hey, Alexa, hey, Siri, hey, Google. So all of that, they're constantly listening all the time. And yeah, I mean, Facebook, Twitter, all of these guys, they track so much information that they can tell just by what you're posting, what your political affiliations are, what kind of food you normally buy, probably what kind of economic situation you're in, general health. They can tell some government agencies use a lot of that information to determine when an outbreak of is happening in a specific situation. So yeah, they know everything, and about the only thing they don't know is your name, and that's only because most of the time they intentionally leave that information out. But they can tell you who you are even without your name.
One of the interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to real quick. One of the interesting things that I heard this real tech person saying, and he was dealing like with cybersecurity and stuff, and he made the perfect comment. He said, "Why do you think that kind of technology, like Alexa, which is, I mean, very Jetsons like, right? But why do you think it's so cheap?" Because they want everybody to have it, because they're making huge amounts of money by targeting advertising.
Whenever you have a free social media thing, it's not free. They're selling your personal information.
Also,
right, but to be clear though, the technology needed to make something like a smart speaker is cheap because it really is cheap. You can go right now and buy a Raspberry Pi board. For those that don't know, it's an Arduino thing. For those that don't know Arduino, look up the maker movement and that'll get you started.
Actually, for those who don't know Arduino, they don't care.
Well, yeah, but it's not that they shouldn't, and they should still look it up. So you can buy a computer board that is plenty powerful enough to make a home smart speaker for $5 real dollars. So it is cheap, not necessarily because they're making money on the back end. They absolutely are. But make no mistake about it, electronic boards are actually cheap.
But I mean, lots of things are cheap in terms of their components, their materials, yet because of what they do and demand, they still carry a huge price tag. I mean, so
we completely agree there.
I could collect.
Completely agree.
And it's just a tiny little piece of paper with a little bit of glue on it, yet it can be a fortune if people want it. And so, that would be, I mean, look at an iPhone. I mean, how expensive is it to make an iPhone versus how much they charge for it? I'm sure there's
iPhone 6S was $157 at the time. They sold it for $650. So there you go. I don't know David, you might have numbers for the 12. I don't know. Sometimes you follow that.
The numbers that you get for the bill of goods are never right. Apple's commented on this many times. It's really hard to just break a piece of hardware down and say, well, the bill of goods is this much, especially with a company like Apple. They invent so much of what's in there, and so the machines, for instance, that makes some of this stuff didn't exist. And so Apple had to pour billions of dollars into companies that make their products so that they could have the machines to do it. And so and
they're practically paupers as a result.
Well, but what I'm saying is they might pop out a 2-cent part, but it cost $20 billion to make it. So it's
sure,
really,
but they'll recoup it over generation after generation.
Sure. Once again, it's difficult to get a bill of goods out of that. I mean, if you took everything that was in an iPhone and you said, okay, I want to buy this on an open market, how much would it cost me? You're still not getting the same price. They've got the economy of scale and things like that. It's just hard to convert in reality.
Right. So you're right that the engineering that goes behind gluing those parts together, and even more the firmware and software that figure into that ultimate control are poorly captured in something like the hardware is worth $157. So
It's
yes,
a
to
little bit
all
like
that.
saying the human body is worth about 78 cents. Because and this was a calculation that someone had made based on the minerals that are in the human body. We've got less than $1 worth of stuff that makes up a human.
I just want to know, is obesity equivalent to inflation?
Well, you know,
Sorry,
maybe they've got $1.15 in them, but it's really a shockingly small amount of money to get the material to make a human body. Most of it's water. It's not so, but to say, well, the bill of goods for every human is about $1 is incorrect. You know,
Well,
That's right, because
I don't know.
God.
What's that?
I was about to say, that's right, because the inventor of the human body, God,
Is worth
And-
about 57 cents.
and with that, I'm pretty sure that I should have inserted a wrap up about 20 minutes ago. So look, there will be another show next week. We will continue the tech conversation because there is a lot in notes that we didn't cover and I want to cover. And I don't actually want to get into the next topic right away. So stay tuned for part 2 of the Tech Roundtable next week. And with that, have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye. See y'all.